I'm delighted to welcome to the show this afternoon my very special guest, Shaun McKee, who's known as the Vitality MD from America. Well, welcome to the show, Shaun.
Well, Elaine, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So, the Vitality MD, that sounds a bit special. So why have you called yourself the Vitality MD?
Well, I've always been known as the Energizer Bunny to my family. Love life, love sucking the marrow out of life, experiencing life with, as my grandmother says, vim, vigor, and vitality. And I have just seen in my last 15 years or so that people who are in the prime of their life are struggling with energy and lack of vitality. They've lost their sparkle. And in fact, I was one of those about 9 years ago myself. Just entered into a completely unknown realm of just not having energy. And I didn't know what was going on. I would literally fall asleep while my husband was telling me about his day, sitting on the couch around 7 or 8 o'clock at night when I should be able to stay awake. And in the morning, my same sweet husband would come into the bedroom with a cup of coffee, hoping the aroma wafting in my nostrils would wake me up. And I just couldn't figure out why I didn't have the get up and go that I used to have. And so when I figured out that it was just a switch that needed to be flipped in my body, I really became passionate about helping people discover that they don't have to go through life without vitality. It's all about, figuring out what it is that people need and addressing that simply and helping people find their sparkle again.
Okay, that sounds interesting and actually a bit simple. A switch. Is it really that simple? Is there a switch in our body that we can use to give us energy?
Well, there are several switches. It's all about cellular signaling. Our body has pathways, many pathways that when activated will tell the body to make more of the good guys. The good guys being important enzymes like superoxide dismutase and proteins catalase, glutathione. There's so many, hemoxygenase, all these things that our bodies innately make can really get to work defending our body from environmental toxins and EMF and radiation and viruses and that kind of thing. And also when our body does not have enough of those good guys in there, taking out the trash, so to speak, our bodies become run down. And so there are pathways that if you know how to turn them on, the body just takes it from there.
So how do you turn them on?
Well, one of the pathways is such a, it's a protein messenger that is found in every cell in our body. And it is basically like a thermostat. It senses cellular stress. And so there are various ways you can turn this pathway on a little bit, one of which is stress, okay? It turns it on because it senses cellular stress and thereby, calls in the troops, so to speak. And so exercise will turn this switch on. And sauna, a little bit of, it's called hormesis, a little bit of stress is a good thing. But there are other ways you can do it. You can do it through food. For instance, broccoli has a compound in it called sulforaphane that is really it's the most potent single ingredient, single food activator of this protein NRF2. But you'd have to have 7 pounds of broccoli sprouts to really, really ramp up your good guys in enough degree to make an effect on cellular oxidative stress. And that is kind of the root cause of malfunction, dysfunction, just cellular inability to repair. And so a better way is to use targeted proven like synergistic compounds that actually can do relatively simply a huge effect on activation of the NRF2 compound. So there's a specific compound that, for instance, is 7 times more powerful than the sulforaphane. There are drugs that do it as well. But generally, you know, a little bit of stress, heat, cold, exercise, fasting, those kind of things will turn on the first of the pathways. There are other pathways, but the NRF2 is kind of the foundational pathway because it's the master regulator of the cellular stress response.
So is NRF2 the name of a pathway in our body, or is it the name of a supplement? Because I've seen lots of stuff on Facebook about NRF2 activation. It's
a pathway in our bodies. There are several companies out there that have created supplements that they call NRF2 activators, but there's got to be real science that shows that if you take X compound, it will activate NRF2 and therefore activate these end genes like hemoxygenase, catalase, glutathione, superoxide dismutase by, you know, so much. And then you can actually measure cellular oxidative stress. There's a test called T-bars, iodobutyric acid reactive substances. That is a marker of lipid peroxidation. The problem with the T-bars test is it has to be run instantaneously. You take the blood out of the body, it is exposed to oxygen and therefore oxidizes. So it has to be run right away. It's incredibly sensitive to time, temperature, jostling. And so if you do that test as a quote unquote send out lab, you're going to get wildly disparate results in the same person and the same sample. You know, so yeah, so it's a pathway in our bodies.
Okay, and before we started recording, we had a little chat, and I noticed you were wearing a T-shirt that said biohacking. Talk to me about biohacking.
Well, biohacking is really using cutting-edge science to become the absolute best version of yourself. It is taking control of a complex system, namely your own biology, and optimizing it. So, you know, your environment, you can biohack your environment by, you know, using infrared lights to counteract the blue lights in your incandescent bulbs. You can biohack your environment by purchasing an infrared sauna, by, you know, getting an air filter, you know, things like that, using clean household products and avoiding things that are, you know, endocrine disruptors and neurotoxins that unfortunately find their way into our homes. That's one way to do it. But you can also biohack your cellular environment by, you know, taking specific blends of nutrients that are proven to turn on these pathways. There's 2 other pathways that that we can biohack, as well as we can biohack our gut, you know, which is a very, very important thing to do. The gut microbiome has been known as a 3-pound quote unquote organ, and the reason we call it an organ is it's so vitally imperative to our cellular function. We are 99% microbial, and I didn't know, you probably know that if you took all the DNA in your body and weighed it, it would be 99% viral, bacterial, you know, fungal, and 1% human. And it's so important that we pay attention to these little buggers, really, and biohack them, because if you feed the pathologic bacteria in your gut, they're going to flourish, and they're going to crowd out the bacteria that are in there making glutathione and making vitamin C and making neurotransmitters. And we need to be cognizant of what we're putting into our internal milieu so that we can biohack, optimize our biology, and have it working for us and not against us.
So you've not just come across this information overnight, Shaun, have you? You've got a whole string of qualifications behind you, and you're actually a neuroradiologist, I believe.
Yes, I hope that the listeners never need my services. I am the person that reads the MRI of your brain or spine when you go to your doctor with a neurologic issue. That's my subspecialty, and it's fascinating. It's really gratifying to be kind of the Sherlock Holmes of medicine. Really, it's where people go to find the answers, to the clues to what's going on.
How did you get involved with that form of medicine in the first place? Because it's not your average nurse or GP or anything, is it? So how did you get into neuroradiology?
Yeah, it's the doctor's doctor. We are the consultant. So when I was in medical school, we would go on rounds and we would see the patient up on the 4th floor, and we would hear their presentation and history. We would examine them, and we would leave with a list of potential diagnoses, differential diagnoses. And then in order to narrow that list down and come up with the diagnosis, we would head down to the basement where the X-ray department, the radiology department was. The reason it was in the basement was because the films were black and white, and they were hung on light boards where the light would illuminate the X-rays from behind, and so it needed to be in the dark. So the only light would be going through the X-ray, so you could get a high resolution view and not have sheen or distractions from outside light. So we would go down to the basement, and we would do what we call radiology rounds, where we would tell the radiologist what was going on with the patient, and they would tell us what the images showed. And then we would go, oh, well, there's a, hepatoma or whatever. We would come up with the answer. Of course, sometimes it would lead to having to get biopsies and laboratory corroboration, but generally the radiologist was where we went to find the answers to what was wrong with our patient.
So from the biography that you sent me, you said at one point you were the chief of neuroradiology at the Keesler Air Force Base Medical Center. So was that, did you do your medical training when you were in the Air Force or before? How did that, tell us your backstory.
Well, I went to medical school at the University of Florida, where I met my amazing husband. We met on an elevator. My classmate asked if I met her big brother. In medical school, you have big brothers and big sisters that tell you about the professors and which books to get, that kind of thing. And I said, no. So we met on an elevator going up to the library. And so we dated for about 4 months. We got engaged, got married 9 months later. And then he got a residency in Jacksonville. So I definitely wanted to do radiology. So I did a radiology residency because I fell in love with the whole Sherlock Holmes thing. And then we kind of had to try to match together for our fellowships, our advanced training. And I received a fellowship at the Tufts New England Medical Center in neuroradiology, and he came there for gastroenterology. During this time for medical school, I was paid. The medical school training was paid for by the United States Air Force, and they deferred my commitment until I was fully trained. They needed neuroradiologists, so they gladly, deferred my paying them back for the radiology or for the medical school training until I was a fully board certified senior member of the American Society of Neuroradiology neuroradiologist. And so then they activated my commitment, and I did 4 years of neuroradiology service at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, which is about 1 town over from where I live.
So where do you live now, Shaun?
It's a little town, idyllic town, as you described, on the Gulf Coast of the Gulf of Mexico, called Ocean Springs. I really recommend, if you've never been, come to visit. We have an amazing Chamber of Commerce. We've got downtown that's covered with a canopy of oaks, and mom and pop shops, restaurants, music, art galleries. It's a lovely beach, and it's a great place to visit.
It does sound idyllic, absolutely. So when you're not doing your Sherlock Holmes with the neuroradiology, I gather you're a bit of a sporty sort. So tell us about your triumphs. You've done quite a few interesting things that the average human being wouldn't even dream about. Never mind put on some running shoes.
Well, when I was in high school, my dad had started running marathons, and I didn't live with my dad, I lived with my mom, but I always dreamt of running a marathon with him. So I started training, and in 1984, I think it might have been 83, no, it was 83, I ran the Marine Corps Marathon with my dad, and it was a wonderful experience. And then I ran it again in 1984. Then once again, I ran it with my husband, not with my husband, with my dad, several years later in medical school. And my husband greeted me at the finish line with a dozen roses. It was wonderful. And then in college, I really took up riding bikes, and my jobs in college and in high school were working at health and fitness facilities. So triathlon just kind of was a natural fit. So I competed in several sprint triathlons and a little bit longer triathlons in college, also several 5Ks and 10Ks. And then when I was in the Air Force, my husband turned 40 and kind of had a midlife crisis, and he started training for marathons and triathlons, and some friend said, well, you know, if you run marathons and triathlons, you might as well run an Ironman. So right after the birth of my second child, I started training for longer distance triathlons with my husband, and the next 9 months later I ran a full Ironman in Florida. And funny, we both qualified that year for the International Triathlon Union ITU World Championships in Ibiza, Spain. We were very excited because we would get to wear, you know, U.S. uniform. But it was in 2002, and I was a little bit uneasy because of the 2001 events and world travel with a baby, you know, 2 babies. And so we declined to go ultimately. I kind of regret it because it would have been an experience of a lifetime, but you know, we made the decision that we needed to make. And then about 10 years later, after running a couple of Ironman, another Ironman triathlon, and then, you know, several half Ironmans, a friend said, hey, I've entered into a 50-mile ultra marathon. Let's do it together. So I said, okay. So I ran a 50-mile marathon, ultra marathon. And that friend, by the way, did not. She kind of backed out. And I'm like, well, I said I was going to do it. I'm going to do it.
So a 50-mile ultra marathon, is it ultra triathlon? I've got muddled up with all the names now.
No, I have not done an ultra triathlon. There are double Ironman triathlons. I have not done that. The longest I've done is 140.6 self-propelled miles, which is the standard Ironman triathlon distance. But the ultra marathon was really a wonderful day. You had to finish in 12 hours. So I was running along at about 14-minute miles or so, and, you know, walking periodically. I actually received a lot of wise counsel from experienced ultramarathoners as I was running along. They're like, you need to walk the hills. And so, you know, so I got all these little pointers. But my dad had actually ridden a bicycle out from the finish line to find me. And I was about 4 miles from the finish line. And so I asked the next aid station worker how much time I had left. And I knew I had 4 miles to go, and I had 36 minutes to finish or not be qualified. You know, because if you did it, the whole thing, and you did it in 12 hours and 1 second, the finish report would say did not finish. I was not going to have that.
Yeah.
So I picked up on my toes, and I kind of ran the last 4 miles in 9-minute miles, and my dad was like, that's all I can do to keep up with you on the bike. But that was a close one. But I did finish in well under 12 hours, and so I got to actually have a report that said I finished. I'm very grateful.
Crikey, I couldn't do it in 12 days, never mind 12 hours. I'd take my hat off to you, Shaun. How do you spend your time on a day-to-day basis these days with all these experiences behind you?
Well, I have curtailed my oxidizing habits a little bit, because in the ensuing education, as I became aware that, okay, this Energizer Bunny thing is kind of not happening anymore. I started learning more about oxidative stress. And coincidentally, athletes, ultra marathoners, endurance athletes have an incredible amount of oxidative stress because they're breathing a lot of oxygen, right? They're exposed to, in fact, when I ran that 50-mile race, it was in the forest, and there had been controlled burns. So I'm sitting there, I literally breathed smoke for 12 hours. It's crazy. I can't believe I did that to myself. But oxidative stress, there's a healthy balance. We need a little bit of it to kill bacteria, right? That's how our macrophages, extinguish toxins, as they, put hydrogen peroxide on them and kills them. So we need a little bit. You need it when you're injured to help your body repair. But the problem comes when your body is overwhelmed with oxidative stress, and you've got so much, free radical damage coming in from the environment, from the air we breathe, the food we eat. It's a byproduct. And if your body's not making those good guys enough, there's a gap, and that's called oxidative stress. So I learned this, and so I started becoming more rational, reasonable with my exercise routine. So typical morning, I get up at 6 and go to the gym and work out for 45 minutes. I do heavy lifting. I also do a little bit of cardio, but I'm trying not to overdo it anymore. And then come home and, read. Teleradiology is a wonderful thing for radiologists. Used to have to go to, a hospital, go to the basement and read films on a conveyor belt, really. But now the images can come into my home through teleradiology. So that's been amazing. And I also spend time helping people learn how to flip the switch. I'm absolutely passionate about helping motivated doers flip the switch on their vitality genes so they can feel better, do more, and become the absolute best version of themselves.
So do you have a private practice then alongside your teleradiology? I love that term, teleradiology. Fantastic.
Yes.
The technology we have today has just opened up so many pathways for people to live a more balanced life, haven't they?
Oh my goodness, yes. And that's what it's all about. It's about balance, balancing our stressors, balancing, the ebb and flow of our lives. So my teleradiology is my professional life, and this Vitality MD is just kind of a passion. So I don't have a clinic per se. I just, if people have a need, I am happy to share with them my solutions that I found, the specific targeted gene activators that turn on the NRF2 pathway. Then we didn't even talk about the NRF1 pathway, which is mitochondrial biogenesis. In order to have the cellular energy to take out the trash and to have those macrophages and all the things that are going on, is the production of superoxide dismutase and glutathione phase 1 and phase 2, liver detoxification. We absolutely need our mitochondria. And the problem is that as the mitochondria are damaged from those free radicals, from that oxidative stress, they are where the energy is produced in the cells, and they are very, very closely tied to that pollution. The energy production and the pollution are hand in hand, and their mitochondrial membranes are right there, and they're going to get damaged. And once they get damaged to a certain degree, they kind of self-destruct. It's called mitophagy. And so now our cells, say our brain cells, have 100,000 mitochondria per cell. Our heart has 10,000 mitochondria per cell. Most cells have over 1,000. Well, as so many of them are self-destructing because of this oxidative stress and damage, now our cells trying to do the same amount of work, detoxify, think, digest, heartbeat, contract, with fewer mitochondria. So it's a vicious cycle. We are trying to do the same amount of work with less energy, and no wonder we get tired as we get older, right?
So you said you've just popped in NRF1. You've already mentioned NRF2. Are there any more NRFs to find out in the
Well,
conversation?
yes, I'm sure there are. The third pathway that I have focused on and found fascinating is starts with an N, but it involves a molecule called NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. And why it's so important is it's the fuel for a set of proteins in our bodies called sirtuins. And sirtuin is spelled S-I-R-T-U-I-N. And it's named for an abbreviation, silent information regulators, SIR. And what these proteins do is, well, there are 7 of them, first of all, 1 in the cytoplasm, 3 in the nucleus, and 3 in the mitochondria. And they will spool our DNA. And spooling, just think of it like a spool of yarn, right? They'll wrap it up anywhere there are genes that would be harmful, cancer-causing genes, inflammation-causing genes, that kind of thing. They spool it, and when it's spooled, RNA cannot decode or code, cannot read the DNA. So those proteins will not be produced. So they are silent information regulators. They're spooling and protecting our cells from transcription of damaging DNA. The other thing that they do is they will, when a DNA strand break occurs, they will go and repair that DNA with another protein called PARP. And so the other important thing that these proteins do is they actually serve as kind of the CEO of the cell. They tell all of those other good guys, the superoxide dismutase, the glutathione, the heme oxygenase, they tell those proteins and enzymes where to go and what to do. So this pathway is exceptionally important. And again, as we get older, our NAD declines 60% after age 40. And even more after age 8, for the next 20 years. It's a precipitous decline in our NAD. It's because NAD is used to make energy. It's used up in all of our cellular processes. And if you have, health challenges, or you work out, or you drink alcohol, you're consuming NAD at an exponential rate. And so if you can figure out a way to activate or increase the production of NAD, that's great. There's ways that you can actually rev up that production. And it's way more effective than just taking a pile of precursors. NAD is a molecule, and nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, like I said, it's made up of niacin. So there are precursors you can take along the pathway of manufacturing NAD. But I liken that to bringing a pile of bricks to a house construction site. And yes, if the construction workers had been waiting on a load of bricks to proceed, the house will go up faster. So if you're deficient in NAD, if you're deficient in the precursors, yes, bringing more precursors will increase your production, 30, 40% over a few months. But a better way to do that increased production is to bring more construction workers and all the materials. And that's what these pathway activators can do. And that's the magic of activating a biologic pathway.
So how do we actually do this? It all sounds intriguing, and I'm sure listeners will be a bit sort of bamboozled by all the medical jargon and everything. But what is, in lay terms, what is the simple things that listeners can do to help protect their DNA and repair the damage and help to produce more NAD, particularly those after 40? And I think a lot of our listeners are over the age of 40.
Well, great. There are synergistic activators that I take, that I educate about in a group that I have on Facebook. It's a private, fun, and interactive. It's a free educational group that's run by physicians, including myself. And we have in there doctors that talk about the specific blends of nutrients. Otherwise you're just guessing. You're just guessing, and it's best to have proven, peer-reviewed, published data that show what you're taking actually works. And if any of your listeners are on Facebook. I'm happy to share a link. I actually have a tiny URL link because Facebook's so clunky with the, facebook.com/group. So I can share it if you'd like.
Yes, please do. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, it's a tinyurl.com website. So tiny, tinyurl.com/vitality, the number 4, life. tinyurl.com/vitality for life. That is our free, fun and educational interactive Facebook group. And that's, I really recommend that because the science is, as you say, bamboozling. It's just like, it's confusing. It's overwhelming sometimes, and it's good to be in a community where other people have not only, can explain it, but they can also share, what it's done for them. Because, the human body is absolutely incredible. And, you think you've tried everything, and, you may give up hope, and my goodness, you've done this and that and this approach, and you're eating, gluten-free and organic, and you're exercising with high intensity interval training, and you're doing intermittent fasting, and, all these things, and you're still exhausted. It's really neat to see people come into the community with that, and you can see their story over time as the fog gets lifted.
So we're talking a supplement, presumably, are we?
There's like I said, supplementation is what you do when you're deficient in a nutrient. So yes, there are some supplements that you can take that you're probably deficient in, like, for instance, prebiotics, to feed the beneficial bacteria. Because when you feed the beneficial bacteria, they will crowd out the bad guys, the bad bacteria. But the others, I guess technically they're a supplement because they're not drugs, but they're not really supplementing. You're not deficient in a specific herb, for example, but because they kind of crack the code on gene activation, I like to call them activators. They're activators.
Okay, so that's tinyurl.com/vitality, the number 4 and life. So people can go onto that link and then find themselves, or presumably apply to join your Facebook group. Is that how it
Yes,
works?
right. And please, mention your podcast as a, when there's questions that you answer. So we'd love for them to, answer with your podcast, Elaine.
Right, okie dokie. So what else have you got up your sleeve that you can talk to us about medically that will be of interest to the listeners?
Well, you had mentioned you were doing some blood analysis.
Yeah.
And what I like to, what I really like is that, live blood analysis, I don't know if you're doing dried blood analysis, which is different than live blood analysis. But you can, with dried blood analysis, you can determine, isn't there a way you can tell whether there's oxidative stress?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I've just had my bloods done again, actually. I did them last July when I started my training, my biohacking training, and everything that my blood showed up then, it did show up oxidative stress, it shows up lymphatic problems, it showed adrenal stress. There were a whole bundle of things, and including digestive problems, which I'm prone to because I was on antibiotics for 23 years. For a condition. I was under medical supervision, and I was told I'd be on them for life. Well, over 20 years ago, I was introduced to natural health and well-being, and I took myself off. But as a result of being on them for 23 years, I have got digestive issues, which always comes up. But all of the things that were picked up in my bloods last July, I've now fixed. I've just had my bloods done again, and the only thing that's coming up pretty much is still the digestive, so I need to do a lot of work on that. But yeah, the dry blood shows up and parasites and all kinds of cardiovascular, even structural problems that will show up if somebody's got a problem with their spine, their shoulders, and this sort of thing. It's amazing. But as you say, the live blood analysis will give you different readings, and I've had live blood analysis before, and it shows you can actually see. It's really spooky, isn't it, when you look through the microscope and you can see the blood cells and things crawling around. It's fascinating.
Absolutely, really, truly. Yeah, and what I love is that, you know, like you said, you can see the absolute results of when you've addressed oxidative stress, when you've addressed gut dysbiosis and cellular membrane permeability. You know, one of the things that Americans are deficient in, for example, is, well, UK, you know, everywhere in the world practically, other than societies that eat a lot of cold water fish, is omega-3s. And, you know, your cell membrane is made up of these omegas, these fatty acids, and they are essential because they make up the cellular membrane and you can't manufacture them, so you have to get them from your diet. And you can see healthy cellular membranes through live blood analysis. You can see oxidative stress. You can literally see the iron oxidizing in live blood analysis. And it's so gratifying when you address these underlying issues that you can see it right there in front of your eyes, you know. And so another way you can see it literally is with your skin. Your skin is your largest organ, and it is affected by oxidative stress, both from the inside, from your capillaries, and from the outside, from the environment, the chlorine in your bath, and if you swim in a pool, the sunlight, the products that you put on your skin, shampoo, lotions, soaps. And so like blood analysis, your skin will show the effects of whether you have a healthy internal milieu or whether you are maybe not so healthy on the inside. So I like to tell people to, you know, if you have access to blood analysis, to get that. That way you can see what's happening and see how things are improving. You don't feel oxidative stress, just like you don't feel your cholesterol number or cancer cells dividing, God forbid. But sometimes after several months of having too much of it, you feel that because it affects your organ systems. And so when you've addressed it, and like you're feeling so much, you know, you've addressed the underlying causes, and so you're feeling better. Your blood shows, your skin probably looks better. So yeah, pay attention.
I'm a great believer in measuring, because if you don't know what you're measuring, then how do you know if you've improved or not until, you know, things start dropping off, or, you know, your skin is bad and so on and so forth. I'm in my 60s now, and I often get complimented on my skin and my vitality and so on. It's because I work at it. You know, I'm a great believer in, as you say, not putting anything dodgy on my skin. I don't knowingly have anything that's toxic on my skin. Everything I do is natural. I don't put any lotions and potions. I use oils, natural oils. You know, anything I shower in or bath in is all natural, and so on. So, and it's really important because it's a build up, isn't it? It's not just, you don't suddenly wake up and you're 40 and you've people that then say, well, you know, I've been all right all these years. I'm 40, I'm 50, whatever it is. I've been all right so far, but it's a build-up, isn't it? One day you look in the mirror and see your mother, or, you know, your grandmother even looking back at you.
Absolutely. My father is a pilot, and he likens it to an airplane that the motor has stopped working. Okay, it will fly. It will continue to fly for a mile or two, but eventually it's coming down. You know, you will land that plane if you don't have the engine. If you are not actively combating this toxic world that we live in, and if you continue to blithely use things that are toxic and expose yourself, and the opposite of biohack, hijack your environment, your plane's going to come down. You're going to have those wrinkles. You're going to have that lack of zest. It will rear its ugly head. And so the more we can do, the earlier, the better we're going to feel, and the better we're going to look.
Absolutely. It's all about being proactive, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, I think that 100 years ago, we didn't need to biohack necessarily, because all of our food was organic and all of our meats were grass-fed and wild caught and locally sourced. And the soil was replete with minerals and vitamins. But today our soil is depleted. Our foods are tainted. You know, our environment is toxic, and so our pathways really do need to be activated. We do need to increase our production of those good guys that can get to work. Interestingly, I don't know if you've heard about a particular type of melon in the south of France that doesn't rot very quickly. They found that that melon doesn't rot very quickly because it produces a lot of superoxide dismutase, and we can be that melon. You know, let's not rot quick.
Well, what's it called? I've not. I must go and get some. What's it called?
Well, I actually heard about it from a advertisement for some topical skin goo. My husband used to call these things that I would get for my skin because I had blotchy skin and I didn't like it. So I would buy every lotion and potion before I learned all about, you know, my biohacking journey. And I had heard about this one lotion, skin cream that had been produced from the melon. I don't remember the breed, the genus, the species of the particular melon, but the whole point was it made more SOD. So I bought it and put it on my skin, very happy that my skin was receiving the SOD from the melon, you know, but I didn't like the way it felt. It was tacky and sticky. And then it was like an aha eureka moment when my doctor told me about, you know, this particular blend of herbs that will reduce oxidative stress. It does it by turning up my own production of SOD. So my body is the body in the south of France that produces more SOD, not the melon, but the body, you know. So right. I just, it made a lot of sense to me.
Okay, and people can find out about this by going onto your group?
Yes.
Brilliant, okie dokie. And you mentioned about the omega-3 and omega-6, and I've done quite a lot of research about this over the last year or so, and as you say, that in pretty much everything that we eat, foods that are fried, processed foods, omega-6 is everywhere, but we need a balance, don't we, of omega-3 and omega-6 for our cells to be permeable, so that the good stuff goes in and the toxic waste can come out of our cells. So talk to us a bit about the omega balance.
Yes, it's all about, you know, cellular membrane permeability, because that's how cells communicate. That's how those neurotransmitters, you know, do the work of, you know, telling your neurons, you know, make this message happen, make this information go from here to there. And, you know, if omega-6s are a little more stiff, less pliable than omega-3s, your body will, your cell membrane needs to be constructed of these omegas, and think of them like bricks. Okay, you're building the house of your cell with bricks, and you can either use, you know, bricks that are, you know, effective, or you can use like styrofoam bricks, right? Either way, you're going to have a structure of a house. Well, you want to use the ones that are your body's meant to. And if you have too many omega-6s, you're going to be building your cellular membrane with stiff bricks, you know, or styrofoam, whatever. The analogy got a little mixed there, but you want to utilize the optimal construction element. And if your diet has too many omega-6s, you're going to use omega-6s. And the only way you can balance it out, if you have a lot of omega-6s, which we do by default, just because that's in the industrialized food supply, crackers, breads, any industrial meats, vegetable oils, they all have omega-6s. And in order to get that balance back, you have to supplement with omega-3s, because you can definitely try to decrease the omega-6s. It's just kind of a losing battle. The current ratio is around 18 or higher to 1 of omega-6s to omega-3s. Some places it's 40 to 50 to 1. It's crazy. Ideally, it needs to be less than 4 to 1. 2 to 1, some people say, or even 1 to 1. That's what produces a healthy cellular membrane that is flexible, permeable. You know, they share a pathway. Now, yes, omega-6s go down to, you know, arachidonic acid and inflammasomes and things like that. And that's important, again, for fighting infection and whatnot. But when it becomes overwhelming and your body's not making enough of the antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, the anti-inflammatory end products, it's because the omega-6 has taken over that kind of that supply chain that they share.
When I was doing my research, the numbers that you've quoted are exactly what I came across, and I was really delighted to have my balance checked, my omega-3 and omega-6, and as you say, 18 to 1. Europeans are 17 to 1 17 parts omega-6 to 1 omega-3, and ideally we want to, as you say, under 4. My measure was 7 to 1, so I was really pleased. The way that I'm eating and living and so on and so forth is pretty okay.
Right.
But I do supplement now. I didn't supplement at that point, but I do supplement now from time to time. I don't do it all the time because I believe in your body needs to be working on its own steam. So every 3 months or so, I'll change my routine, and I'll get the body working on its own, and then I might take omega-3 for 3 to 6 months, say, and then I'll leave it off again. So I chop and change according to how I'm feeling and how my tests are coming out.
That's great. You are definitely a biohacker for sure. And it's all about tracking. Like, you know, you can't change what you don't measure, and or you can't change what you don't track, and you can't track what you don't measure. So it's great that you're measuring. I have a litmus test, though, for omegas, and that is literally the lick test. So I tell people, obviously, if you put oxidized oils into your body, that is going to increase oxidative stress. And, you know, it's so critically important to get a fresh quality, non-oxidized omega-3. And the way you tell if it's oxidized or not is to cut open the capsule, squeeze it on a plate, and lick it. Or sniff it and lick it. And if you can do that without gagging, it's a fresh, you know, omega. But if it smells rancid, it is rancid, and you don't even want to give it to your dog. You want to throw it away. So that's an important test if you're going, when you take omega-3s, to make sure that you get a quality one that is protected from oxidation, that is molecularly distilled in inert gases, and has, you know, preservatives in it like rosemary and lemon and lime, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's really important. A lot of people think, oh, I'll buy it off the internet and it's cheap as chips and it'll you know, be okay for me, but that's not the case. I don't use capsules. I actually take liquid and I swig it out the bottle because it tastes so nice. I
Right,
have
that's great.
very healthy wild sauce, which is lemon and orange flavored, and it tastes delicious, and I know it's doing me good. So
Yes.
thank you so much for your time today, Shaun. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you, and such information you've got to share. So the show, listeners, remember that the show is repeated on Saturday at 11 o'clock. So if you haven't managed to take down all the notes and everything, you will be able to have an opportunity to listen again on 11 o'clock this coming Saturday, and also on my website, perfect-health.co.uk. Go to the radio page, and the program will appear on there as well. So you've got a couple of opportunities to listen again to what Shaun's saying. And don't forget Shaun's link, which is tinyurl.com/vitality4life, and then you can pop into her Facebook group and obviously mention that you heard about her on here. So Shaun, before we go, I ask guests to come up with a couple of songs, and your choices are She Blinded Me with Science, and that's by Thomas Dolby, and I Feel Good by James Brown. So why did you choose both of these?
Well, I do feel good, and I want everyone to feel good. Life is too short to go through it feeling crummy and without your zest and your sparkle. And Blinded Me with Science, that is exactly how I felt when my doctor said the words that there was something that could reduce oxidative stress by an average of 40% in just 30 days in humans, and it was clinically proven in peer-reviewed published studies. I was like blinded by the science. I was so excited. I went to PubMed and I read all the studies, and it was a eureka moment. And then, you know, after activating my pathways, it took several weeks, but it was like a veil had been lifted. I was no longer foggy and frazzled. I was joyful and jubilant, and I felt good. So I wish that everyone would feel good.
Fantastic. And the Blinded with the Science thing, that's a tongue-in-cheek something or other, I believe.
Yeah, it's a great song. I think there was a movie that had that featured in it. It was a fun movie. But yeah, it's all about science. So, you know, if you are just poking and guessing and grabbing a supplement off the shelf because you read an article about it and you figure, oh, you might as well add, you know, green tea or olive leaf extract or ginkgo biloba or ginseng. It's like, you know, oh, it's selenium, I might be deficient in this and that. It's like guesswork. The key is to actually have something that has the science that backs it up, that proves that it's working at a cellular level in a targeted way that truly does biohack your own biology and optimize you to be the absolute best version of yourself.
Brilliant. Well, I should definitely be going on your site. Are there any other ways that people can contact you, Shaun?
Oh, yes. My Facebook is Shaun Weaver McKee is my name, S-H-A-U-N. Weaver, W-E-A-V-E-R, McKee, and my messenger is like m.me/SHAUN.w.McKee. That's messenger is a great way to reach out to me. If you would like to text, my phone number is US 228-424-3935. I'm reachable by that most times. Just, you know, give me time and I'll get back to you. I'll answer personally.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Shaun, for your time, and your songs are coming up, and I will see you online, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Elaine. I really enjoyed chatting with you. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.